Famously unknown. Roy Orbison. The tragedy behind the glasses. Famously unknown. You know his voice, even if you've never known his name. That soaring, aching sound behind "Oh, Pretty Woman," crying, in dreams. A man in black, standing almost completely still on stage behind dark glasses, while one of the most powerful voices in music poured out of him. But strip away the sound, and what's left is one of the most brutal, most quietly heroic lives in music history. A man who lost almost everything, more than once, was betrayed by the people closest to him, and somehow still walked back out on stage, hidden behind those dark glasses every time. This isn't the story of a voice. It's the tragedy behind the glasses, and most of it you've never heard. Chapter 1. A Poor Family and a Failure Before the Hit. Roy Orbison was born in 1936 in Vernon, Texas, into a family still reeling from the Great Depression. Both his parents were out of work when he was born. His father, Orby Lee, was an oil well driller and car mechanic when there was work to be had. His mother, Nadine, was a nurse who also quietly painted and wrote poetry in whatever time she had spare. The family moved constantly chasing survival, to Fort Worth for wartime factory work, briefly back to Vernon during a polio scare, and eventually to a hard, dust-blown oil town called Wink, which Roy himself later summed up in 7 words: football, oil fields, oil, grease, and sand. Music was one of the only steady things in that house. His father taught him guitar alongside his older brother Grady and a couple of uncles. Proper family jam sessions were normal there. Roy wrote his very first song at just 8 years old, during a stretch when a polio scare had separated him from his parents entirely and sent him to live with his grandmother. And from the age of 4, he'd already been wearing thick glasses for genuine eyesight problems, long before they became any kind of stage persona. His first real shot at a career came in 1956, a song called Ooby Dooby, which got him signed to Sun Records, the same label that had just made Elvis Presley a star. It went nowhere. His next single flopped outright. Sun Records itself lost interest, and at one point things got so bad his car was repossessed and he was leaning on family and friends just to get by. So Orbison did something less glamorous. He started writing songs for other people instead, hoping someone else could turn his words into a hit. A minor success here, a song picked up by Johnny Cash there. Nothing that changed his life. Then, in 1958, he wrote a song named after his new wife, Claudette Frady, a teenager he'd met at a dance a few years earlier. The Everly Brothers recorded it as the B-side to All I Have to Do Is Dream. It became a genuine hit. That song, Claudette, wasn't just a nice gesture to his wife. It was the moment Roy Orbison stopped being a failed rockabilly singer and started becoming one of the great songwriters of his generation. Chapter 2, A Young Marriage and the Cadillac. Flush with royalty money for the first time in his life, Orbison did what a lot of newly successful young men do. He bought the most expensive pink Cadillac available. Within a short time, he and Claudette were broke and moved back in with his parents in Wink. It's a detail that gets lost in the legend. Before he was untouchable, he was a young husband learning the hard way how to handle money. Chapter 3. The Affair and the Song Born from It. As Orbison's career took off through the early 1960s, constant touring pulled him away from home for long stretches. In 1963, while he was on the road, Claudette began an affair with Braxton Dixon, the contractor who was building their new house in Hendersonville, Tennessee. When Roy found out, he fired Dixon on the spot and finished building the house himself, with a hired carpenter standing in. By 1964, the marriage was falling apart entirely, and here's the detail almost nobody knows. One of Orbison's most iconic songs was written in the middle of it, practically about it. He was in a writing session with his songwriting partner, Bill Dees, when Claudette walked in and said she was heading into town. Both men, by most accounts, knew exactly where she was really going. Dees cracked, half bitterly. A pretty woman never needs any money. Within the hour, Orbison had Oh Pretty Woman, a song about a woman walking away, born directly out of watching his own wife walk away to another man. Chapter 4: Divorce and the Crash That Brought Them Back. In November 1964, Roy and Claudette divorced. 10 months later, while Orbison was touring the UK, he came off his motorcycle at a racetrack in front of thousands of watching fans, breaking his foot so badly he had to perform that evening's show in a cast. Claudette flew to Britain to be by his side while he recovered, and it was that visit that brought them back together. By August 1965, the couple had quietly remarried, and Roy confirmed publicly that they were back together. Chapter 5: The Crash That Took Her. Their shared love of motorcycles, the very thing that had reunited them, turned tragic less than a year later. On the 6th of June, 1966, Roy and Claudette were riding motorbikes together on their way home near Gallatin, Tennessee. A pickup truck pulled out in front of her. She struck the door and died almost instantly. She was 24. Roy was riding right behind her when it happened. Chapter 6: The Fire. 2 years later, grief hadn't finished with him. In September 1968, while on tour in England again, news reached Orbison that his family home in Tennessee had caught fire. Even now, accounts of exactly how it started don't fully agree. Some say his sons were playing with a lighter near something flammable. Others, more detailed, say his father-in-law was watching the boys that day, and 2 of them had been near petrol stored in the garage for an antique car restoration. Whatever the true cause, the result was the same. An explosion, then fire moving through the house in seconds. His 2 eldest sons, Roy DeWayne, 11, and Anthony, 6, died in that fire. His youngest, 3-year-old Wesley, survived, pulled out by his grandparents. Roy was thousands of miles away on tour when he got the news. 2 sons lost in a single night, and he wasn't even in the country to say goodbye. Chapter 7: Barbara and being cheated by the man he trusted most. Here's the detail that makes that tour even harder to sit with. It was on that same 1968 trip to England, the one he was on when the fire took his sons, that Orbison met a teenage German girl named Barbara Jacobs in a nightclub. He had no idea in that moment how much he'd need her. They married in 1969, built a new home together, and had 2 more sons. By every account from people close to him, Barbara became the reason he kept going at all. But the years that followed were quiet ones professionally, and Orbison was slowly discovering something else entirely. For 24 years, his manager and publisher Wesley Rose had been handling his entire career. In August 1982, Orbison did something drastic. He filed a $50 million lawsuit against Rose, alleging fraud and mismanagement. The claims were damning, that Rose told him he never needed to read his own contracts, signed him to deals with extraordinary terms, charged him double commissions for work he never did. The darkest allegation of all, that Rose had exploited Orbison's fragile mental state during his divorce from Claudette, years earlier, that same painful chapter we've already told you about, to get him to sign away a key contract. The man he'd trusted with his entire career had allegedly taken advantage of him at the worst moment of his life. Chapter 8: The Unlikely Comeback. Then, remarkably, everything turned around. In 1986, director David Lynch used In Dreams in a haunting scene in his film Blue Velvet, introducing that voice to an entirely new generation. In 1987, Orbison was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, introduced personally by Bruce Springsteen. That same year, an all-star televised tribute brought together Springsteen, Bonnie Raitt, Elvis Costello, K.D. Lang, and Tom Waits, all there to play alongside him. In 1988, he co-founded the Traveling Wilburys with Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne, one of the most unlikely, beloved supergroups in music history. He was, quite suddenly, everywhere again. Chapter 9. The Ending Nobody Expected. On the 4th of December, 1988, Orbison played what turned out to be his final show in Highland Heights, Ohio. 2 days later, back home, he spent the day with his surviving sons, flying model airplanes before having dinner at his mother's house. That night, he complained of chest pains. Hours later, he was gone. A heart attack at 52. Chapter 10. The Legacy, Everything That Happened After. He left behind an estate worth an estimated $20 million, and Barbara wasn't about to let it, or him, simply fade away. 2 months after his death, she released the album he'd been working on, Mystery Girl. It gave him a posthumous top 5 hit. She spent years afterward fighting for him in courtrooms, suing anyone who used his music or image without permission, taking on Sony itself over unpaid royalties. By the time she was done, she was widely regarded as one of the wealthiest widows in the history of pop music, and his song kept making history entirely on its own. In 1990, Oh Pretty Woman, born, remember, out of watching his first wife walk away to another man, became the title and theme of one of the biggest romantic films of the decade. Millions of new fans had no idea it had ever belonged to anyone but Julia Roberts and a red convertible. Barbara managed all of it, the money, the music, the memory, until her own death in December 2011. She was 60. She died of pancreatic cancer almost exactly 23 years, to the month, after Roy himself had died. Today, the estate belongs jointly to all 3 of his surviving sons, Roy Jr. and Alex, Barbara's boys, and Wesley, the only son who survived that fire back in 1968. Together, they still manage his catalog, and in 2019, they opened a museum in his honor in the small Texas town where it all began. Wink. Sign off. He spent his whole life being defined by loss: a wife, 2 sons, a fortune, a manager he trusted. And every time, he did the one thing nobody expected. He went back out, stood behind those dark glasses, and sang anyway. That's the part the voice never told you. That was famously unknown. Every legend has a secret. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.